When it comes to building legal relationships, what are the secret codes that drive the game forward? Rather, who influences those codes? If you are someone who is interested in the human element coloring deal-making, come, listen in on the core values of dealmakers, one theorem at a time. Welcome to a fresh new episode of the Dealmaker's Theorem.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you spending your Friday morning on the second episode of the Dealmaker's Theorem. Our guest today brings senior legal leadership experience from the telecom sector at majors such as Tata Tele and Satyam, and at the multi-sector VC fund People Capital Advisors, to his current agritech GC role, and to our conversation today. Please welcome WayCool General Counsel Kiran Gupta R for today's conversation. In Kiran's words, wearing the commercial lens helps even as a lawyer. He emphasizes on his financial background as majorly supplementing his negotiation tactics when he's leading WayCool's team to milestones such as raising over 100 million from over 23 deals from over 21 investors in a single year, including VC funds, private equity funds, sovereign wealth funds, family offices, simultaneously also raising over 100 crore of venture debt and also onboarding 5 digital lending partners. To say a yes and make it happen within the framework of what the law says. Deals need lawyers who can clearly see the numbers, he believes. First of all, thank you for giving me your time, Kiran, for this little project of mine to get into the mind space of general counsel and deal makers and decision makers. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Prachi, for having me on your show.
And I were talking about the other day about relationship management as a person who is not just a general counsel, but a chief, a person with a high up seat on the business decision-making table, and is therefore involved in coordinating between a lot of different stakeholders. And the first question that I really have to ask you is about that one chief, difficult relationship, so to say, which is the relationship between the sales team and the legal team. So, why are they mortal enemies instead of being best of friends, or are they mortal enemies at all? Over to you, according to you.
So obviously the sales team is actually looking to close deals faster and at a speed at which they want. So it helps to understand the requirement and sort of enable them to close the deals fast. So for example, at WayCool, we have scanned the entire length and breadth of the entire value chain of the business that we are doing. And we've developed around 67 different kinds of templates. It helps for us to actually work with the speed in which the sales team wants and turn around things. See, the point is, earlier, about a year back, we were closing around one agreement every 2 days by looking into all these business aspects and working on templates and benchmarking it with the industry standards and bring a lot of transparency and fairness into all these components in it. I think we've doubled the turnaround times, and we are closing 2 agreements every day of this.
We're talking about the qualities that, in your journey as closer. I would say closer now, given the speed and volumes at which you're doing it. You have to be firm, of course, as legal, but the way it is seen over the years, the legal department inside the company has changed as a function which will say no, essentially, to the business, to a function which will actually facilitate the business. What would be your chief values around achieving that with all of these varieties of stakeholders?
It requires a paradigm shift in the way GCs are looking at deal closures, and appropriate skills as well as the paradigm shift in the mindset really helps to reach the middle ground quickly. Not that it works in every given instance, but in most of the instances, I've seen that really comes to help.
I want to understand is it that the external advisors are not sort of overlapping with what this team is already trying to achieve in-house? In terms of, there's a lot of course, there are nuances to sector specific regulations, changes, and there's a lot of working knowledge involved of these relationships. So what would you seek that is critical from their end, which is not a duplication in-house?
Prachi, I think the process with which I engage external legal counsels need to be mentioned, because there are a lot of rigor in every external engagement that we do. I make sure that the primary relationship is with the equity partner of a firm, or so because it helps to be having the primary relationship there, where we have the confidence that they have been there, done that, and because we engage with a lot of conversation to understand where their motivations are coming from. Certain external lawyers are excited about a courtroom battle. Certain lawyers are excited with a boardroom battle. Certain both. So at times, what happens is the riding both the ponies together actually has a very different timelines involved in it. Depending on the complexity of the deal, depending on the timelines with which things need to be closed and things like that, I engage as external legal counsel who's most appropriate for a particular issue at hand. There is never something called a panel that we've created where we just go to them for every deal or every issue at hand. The GC's role is to constantly keep evaluating skill set and arrive at certain fitments, understanding and fitments, so that it works well for the organization, as well as becomes easy to manage even for the external legal counsel.
You are one person, your external advisors and your team has to mirror that. So there's that challenge for you, how to make this whole setup, mirror your values. Do you recollect any stories where external advisor has perfectly, walked the talk on these values that you're saying? Because nowadays, I mean, I hear that common phrase that yes, we should not be always raising red herrings to commercial objectives. We should think like businesses, and we've seen it play out in practice, for instance.
Sure. So, Prachi, the point is external legal counsels are engaged to give the legal inputs to the GC, right? So they can't be wearing the commercial hat themselves, because it is the GC's role. So clear understanding of the roles which different peoples are playing around the table really helps. Because as a GC, I'm better placed to have a certain commercial calls taken while negotiating a deal, because the perspective with which I approach a deal is completely different from what an external would, because the external has a limited perspective on the deal at hand. Whereas as a GC, I understand every sphere of this business and the fact that how a deal fits into the larger scheme of things. So I'm better placed to take a commercial call. So predominantly, the scoping discussion that I have with external legal counsels technically laid very clear that they are here to give advice on the legalities of things and not take commercial calls themselves unless until requested for.
Understood. So, okay, so then they have to still do more of the tactical legal work. But then the team that you had in-house, if there was one thing that they had to keep at the top of their mind about the commercial objective of, say, WayCool, this is what we are exactly trying to do, this is at the heart of it, what would that be for your in-house team of lawyers?
The in-house team works with a lot of SOPs as well as a lot of checklists and a lot of lists that they need to tick off before signing any agreement. So those are big normalizers, and the fact that everybody will need to negotiate clauses and bring it in alignment with what the SOP says is a big comforting thing. You don't land up in something that you are not ready for while following the process. So in a way, the in-house departments have been created and function in a way where it is more process-driven and not people-driven. So the element of judgment error is fairly lesser when a process is being followed and a clear SOP is adhered to. So that's exactly what the in-house function works with. and everybody is clear what these SOPs are. A lot of trainings and a lot of awareness sessions have been conducted internally. For example, WayCool is a large organized player in a very unorganized sector like an agritech and agri-commerce. So if you look at the supply chain, food supply chain business, we find that there were challenges at certain legs of this value chain. So what we did was we formulated SOPs, we recorded all these video footages, created ready reckoners, SOPs, and then we also made bilingual agreements, which actually helped to debottleneck all the clogs in the entire process of actually closing contracts. And the internal teams, not only the in-house legal team, but also the teams that were in the forefront interacting with the third parties, explaining them the terms of the contract and things like that. So it actually helped the entire team that was actually working on a project. So what helps is being able to create a lot of alignment and eliminate a lot of ambiguity and vagueness in the understanding of a contract. Because in an unorganized sector, technically the challenges are actually surprising at times. But initially we thought we'll plug all these inefficiencies and challenges so that things become seamless going forward.
Mm-hmm. Have you been resorting to any specific legal AI or legal tech majorly in your process management?
See, actually, AI, the way things are going in terms of how AI is able to churn out agreements, a pretty standard services agreement, NDAs, and whatever doesn't require too much of customization. I find over the last 3 months, to be very precise, the number of contracts which have been churned out by ChatGPT is actually increasing. So the drafting timelines are actually coming down, while review timelines are actually getting extended. That's the composition I see in my team in terms of their resource allocation and their bandwidth allocation on projects. But however, having said that, what we are also doing is we are running our templates through all the AI tools to just take stock of where we are and make it more robust and comprehensive. That is as far as the drafting side of things and making our templates robust. As far as the review is, we are using some ready off the shelf tools, software tools for alignment of documents and cross-referencing and things like that. Though it is limited, it helps in a limited way. Technically, I see a lot of time of my team actually consumed in reviewing documents rather than drafting, which we used to at some point.
But the final question, of course, is that, when you look back in your journey as a lawyer, you could have ended on the firm side, but you ended up a GC. Do you see any values, any qualities, I would say, or strengths that you feel like particularly led you to this and you use again and again, which are just more right for a GC?
I think, as I was alluding earlier, approaching everything with a sense of fairness really helps, Prachi, because there's no joy in actually litigating. And the biggest role of a GC is to ensure the resources are deployed at the most optimally. So fighting out cases doesn't really help. In my career in the earlier days, I've handled a lot of litigation under the International Arbitration Act. The couple of disputes emanated from the documents that I've drafted, got tested before through arbitration process in Mauritius, Supreme Court of Mauritius, second appeal to the Privy Council. We've been successful in all these things. But the fact is that this journey took 8 years' time for actual closure. So at some point in time, you say you're legally right in doing a lot of things, right? But the fact is, as a GC, the biggest role is to ensure we avoid disputes to a large extent, but to see if something can be done as a pre-litigation strategy or at the time when we are doing these contracts to ensure a lot of alignment of the parties are made. For example, some of our contracts, we do something called contract bulletproofing and contract stress testing. Now, if I can just take a minute to explain those. Contract stress testing is, we take a template that we use, and then we sit with the business to understand what and all could go wrong in a particular transaction, and see if those things are somewhere somehow contemplated in the draft, so that it's not a draft that is just copy paste jobs, but it is very clearly reflecting what the business wants. And this is called a contract stress testing, where anything could go wrong. It's anybody's guess, and we guess and see whether those things are appropriately covered. So by doing this, what technically happens is, whatever surprises we might get at during the term of the contract is already more or less captured in the contract, and it helps to avoid disputes at a later point in time. The other thing is the contract bulletproofing, where what we do is, in all multi-year contracts, while the parties would have started this business relationship with a certain understanding in mind and would have had a contract in place, but due to good relationship, they would have actually ended up doing much more things than what the contract actually says. So what we do is, at a periodic intervals, sit with these teams to understand if the contract reflects what they are doing in reality. So while doing that, what technically happens is, the contract is always beefed up to reflect what is happening in reality, and it helps to periodically align with the parties about various commercial aspects of how the business is actually being run, rather than leaving it to guesses of any person. So by doing this alignment forcefully, what really happens is, a lot of disputes that could actually possibly emanate in future are actually avoided. So the GC's role is to also ensure the resources are deployed optimally and keep the disputes to the minimum. And even disputes, while generally within the legal team, there are teams that are handling litigation. Now, we've actually changed the nomenclature within the team to call it a dispute management and not litigation, to ensure that the disputes are managed in a way that the resources are optimally utilized and taken to a quick closure in a way that it is not the organization desires.
Okay, I have a short surprise game for you, which just requires light-hearted responses to, I'll say, 5 or 6 words, and whatever comes to your mind, just speak that. So
Sure.
let's start. First is disputes.
Disputes, it's an opportunity to align with persons who don't see eye to eye.
Contracts.
Contracts requires a lot of time to find the needle in the haystack.
Agritech.
Emerging field which is changing constantly and giving a challenge to lawyers to keep up.
AI.
Very complex. Looks easy to use, but complex in terms of the legalities around.
Kiran Gupta.
A fun-loving person, a dedicated lawyer, and a hardcore commercial at heart.
And finally, the Dealmaker's Theorem.
A very good platform for GCs to really put in their experience, share their experience, and with the hope that it's going to help the fraternity.